Thor. Thor, Old Norse, RR, is the Norse Aesir god of thunder, lightning, storms, and strength. He is the son of Odin and Fjorgyn, husband of Sif, brother of Tyr, half-brother of Heimdall and Baldur. The father of Magni, Modi, Thrud, stepfather of Ullr and uncle of Forseti. Thor appears in the true ending of God of War, 2018, and returns as the secondary antagonist of God of War, Ragnarok. Norse mythology. In Norse mythology, Thor is an Aesir god associated with thunder, lightning, storms, oak trees, strength, the protection of mankind, and also hallowing and fertility. Thor is described as a fierce, red-haired and bearded god who carries a menagerie of magical weapons, from a pair of magical gauntlets to a belt of strength. However, his most notable weapon is the hammer Mjolnir, which is powerful enough to level mountains. God of War Universe. Thor was born to Odin, king of Asgard, and the giantess, Fjorgyn. He is also a brother of Tyr, half-brother Heimdall and Baldur. At some point in his life, he would marry Sif and sire a daughter with her. Thor also had two sons, Magni and Modi, one of which, Magni, was conceived with Jarnsaxa. However, it's rumored that Modi was also conceived by a Jotun. Sindri commented this was a sordid story. Odin commissioned Brock and Sindri to build a powerful weapon, Mjolnir, for Thor to use to protect Asgard. Both dwarven brothers would come to bitterly regret making the hammer many years later. At some point, Odin invited the stone giant, Hrungnir, to Asgard. After getting drunk on mead, Hrungnir was goaded by Odin into making all manner of boasts and antics, all for the amusement of the court. When Thor arrived at the hall, he was unamused by the drunken giant's threats, and proceeds to slam Mjolnir so hard on Hrungnir's head that it smashed to pieces, with chunks of rock ended up lodged in Thor's head. Startled by the faceful of rock, he didn't notice Hrungnir's body falling on top of him. None of the Aesir in the hall were strong enough even to budge the corpse off him. Thor's sons, Magni and Modi, who at the time were no bigger than shrubs, would come to their father's aid and manage to lift Hrungnir's body off him while no one, except for Mimir, was looking. Magni would get all the praise from Thor for being blonder, while Modi became bitter and resentful towards his brother for not getting any credit for his involvement. After Odin was forced to flee Jotunheim when the giants discovered him trying to steal their secret knowledge of the future, he furiously ordered Thor to use Mjolnir to slaughter every giant in Midgard that he could find. By the time of Laufey's death, Thor had already slaughtered most of the giants in Midgard, with the exception of Jormungandr, and earned a fearful reputation as the strongest Norse god in all the 9 realms. At some point in Vanaheim, a drunken Thor had fought with Laufey, contributing to the destruction of the valley they tore apart along with the many lives killed there. Both of them were evenly matched and the fight ended in a stalemate and a frozen lightning bolt. When the giant Thamur went to Midgard in order to search for his son, Hrimthur, Thor appeared and killed the stonemason by causing him to fall on his own chisel, and Thamur's gigantic body crushed the fishing village which worshipped the Vanir god Njord. Thor would always act like he planned to make the giant fall onto the village and destroy it, although Mimir states that it was simply just a case of luck and called the god of thunder as the sweaty bawbag. Following the murder, Odin entered a bet with Hrimthur, who had disguised himself as a mortal, to improve the walls of Asgard within a near impossible span of time. Odin lost the bet and sent Thor to kill Hrimthur when he discovered stonemason's true nature as a Jotun. Unbeknownst to Odin, Hrimthur had placed a weakness in the walls and entrusted the secret of his deception only to Freyja for the preparation for Ragnarok when Surtur would arrive and burn Asgard to ash. The giant Thrym once stole Mjolnir and ran off to Jotunheim, while Thor, Mimir described him as the Thunder Lummox, was sleeping. Thor snuck into Jotunheim with Freyja into the wedding feast between her and Thrym. When the giant king revealed Mjolnir during the ceremony, Thor revealed himself, took back his hammer and began slaughtering every giant present for the festivities, including Thrym by smashing his skull. That is until Freyja cast a spell to return Thor and herself back to Asgard, which caused him to hold some form of disdain against her, as he was also ordered by Odin to establish a foothold in the realm. Thor also still trusted his brother Baldur completely, despite the fact that the god of light had lost his sanity long ago in the eyes of the other Aesir and was regarded as dangerously unhinged. God of War, 2018. Although absent in the main campaign, he is mentioned consistently throughout as a monster who slew every giant he could find in Midgard to satisfy his bloodlust. Thor is also mentioned to have fought the world serpent years ago during his massacre of the giants. But, instead of emerging victorious, the world serpent proved to be just as strong as the thunder god, leading to a stalemate. Thus Thor was forced to return to his father Odin empty-handed. As a result, Thor and the world serpent have hated each other ever since. It is also said that their rivalry will not end until the coming of Ragnarok. Kratos and Atreus also meet the spirit of a former disciple of Thor, who desires vengeance on the god for wronging his family. After his father died, the spirit's mother built a statue of Thor to watch over his grave and were surprised when the Aesir god himself came to offer condolences. While they were initially thrilled, Thor took advantage of the family's hospitality. When the mother begged him to leave, Thor murdered her in a fit of drunken rage. The spirit, throughout his whole life, lived in grief until it turned into rage and hatred. Before he can leave Midgard to begin his quest for vengeance, he requests that the statue be destroyed, and any valuables in his father's grave may be looted with his blessing. In their boat, Kratos uses the man's story to remind his son of an important lesson: the lives of men mean nothing to the gods, recounting Kratos' own experience of being betrayed time and again by the Olympian gods. After the statue was destroyed and the father's grave was looted, Kratos and Atreus returned to the spirit to let him know. Knowing that his bond to Midgard is now severed, he gave the duo his gratitude before leaving, thus beginning his quest. When Atreus amazingly remarked on the spirit's bravery, Kratos called the spirit a fool, as he knew that going off to find and face off against Thor is really foolish, as the god of thunder is really formidable. Modi and Magni joined Baldur in hunting Kratos and Atreus, the former of whom killed Magni in a confrontation. A horrified Modi fled to Asgard and reported Magni's demise to Thor, who was furious to learn of his favored son's death. Believing Modi had abandoned Magni, further angered by his failure to avenge his brother, Thor brutally beats him for his cowardice. These wounds would leave Modi severely weakened and later lead to his death at Atreus' hands. Thor only physically appears in the game's true ending. During a dream about the future, years after the events of the game, Kratos and Atreus were sleeping. Thor arrives and summoned a huge storm outside their house, causing Kratos and Atreus to investigate. When Kratos demands he reveal his identity, Thor silently lifts his cloak, revealing Mjolnir as it emits electricity. The dream ends and is relayed by Atreus to his father after he wakens, theorizing Thor will come to avenge the deaths of both his sons and his half-brother Baldur. God of War, Ragnarok. A few years after Baldur, Magni and Modi's death, Thor brings a giant storm to Kratos' front door so he can unexpectedly share with them a drink of mead. To know that they can trust each other, they put their weapons on the table, and although Thor doesn't show any violent intent, you can see something's holding him back when he pours some mead into Kratos' cup, saying that he just wants to be polite. It's when Odin visits, that he lets Thor off the leash and permits him to go all out against Kratos because the god of war wouldn't accept the terms given. Relieved that he can do what he wants to do, the thunder god uppercuts Kratos with Mjolnir and it sends him flying right through the roof, and towards the secret chamber in Tyr's temple. While flying, Thor catches up to Kratos and introduces him to a Norse tradition they do called blood payments, where he's allowed to take something from what he took from his family. The two engage in a ferocious combat. During the battle, Thor becomes infuriated to hear Kratos telling him that Modi was killed out of fear of his own father, and that he was the one that truly killed his own son with the bruises that he inflicted, though Thor doesn't care less on what Kratos has to say. Resuming the fight on Tyr's bridge, the god of thunder gains the upper hand and knocks Kratos unconscious, causing the Spartan to be near death. However, Thor, refusing to let Kratos die unless he gets to see him at his best, electrocutes him back to his feet. Gotten a hold of Kratos, Thor finally understands how his sons were defeated, but explains that he is someone totally different who is able to put up a challenging fight against Kratos. He then mentions that Odin has plans for Atreus, and that brings out Kratos' inner beast, using it to secure a good punch to Thor's face, which chipped one of his teeth. By choice, Thor chooses not to carry on because he's gotten to see Kratos' Spartan rage. Satisfied, he states to the Spartan that his blood debt is paid and leaves. In Asgard, Thor has arrived to stop his younger brother Heimdall from harming Atreus any longer and confirms that he is indeed a guest for Odin, whether he agrees with Heimdall or not. Things get pretty heated between the two when Heimdall teases Thor, and the god of thunder intimidates him enough to make him give up wanting to fight. Dismissed by Odin to go do something else, Thor says he will gladly and leaves. Called down to help Atreus with a mission to find the map, the thunder god jump scares Odin from behind in a second. Whether or not it was a fatherly thing to say or an insult, while Odin tells Atreus to take the mask, he includes in Thor and calls him by the name, this stealthy side of beef. Before they left, directly by command, Thor is told to go easy on Atreus because of the bad blood he has towards the kid. On their mission, Thor helps to clear away enemies and to smash any obstacles in the way, leaving everything else to Atreus. However, without Odin watching them, he threatens Atreus that he would have killed him right now if it wasn't for the command he was given by Odin, no hint of forgiveness being given as he was the one that killed Modi. That said, they go their separate ways for now to finish looking for the mask. Heading back to Asgard, Thor tells Atreus to never test him again and gives another threat that because of his Jotun blood, he'll revel in killing him. When they return to Asgard, Thor wasn't given any of the credit by Odin, who doesn't believe that he has taught Atreus anything, just like the latter himself said. It's shown then that Thor is treated like nothing by his father, but he's been dealing with it so much he's learned to go with it. While Atreus is walking over to Odin, Thor is heard questioning his father on why the young Jotun is even in Asgard if he was the one who killed one of their own. Thinking that Sif is the one putting these lies into his head, he excludes her from the conversation and says that it's about Modi and Magni. Having had enough of it, Odin sends Thor away to go break something and honestly thought him better when he was drunk. Sent to find Thor for another mission, Atreus goes to Thrud for help and they both find her dad in an Asgardian pub, Black Thunder, drinking away his sorrows. Angry at Atreus for bringing Thrud just to see him like this, he's luckily too drunk to engage in combat, so he replies to his daughter that he's relaxing. Asked for him to stop, Thor says that there's not much to stop him doing because he's already drunk, then boastfully declares to the whole Black Thunder that he is good at two things, killing giants and pissing mead, and whoever thinks otherwise will get hit by Mjolnir in the face. Had enough of Atreus's talking, he tells him to be quiet and throws his cup. Atreus, dodging in a drunken Einherjar, is hit instead, mistaking Atreus to be the one who threw it. From that, a giant brawl breaks out and Thor joins in. Through the madness, he's seen throwing another of the Einherjar onto a table, beating multiple others, and drinking while ignoring Atreus, but returns to the fight after his mug gets destroyed. If he wanted to, or if he was his drunk, he kills an Einherjar captain and saves Atreus, who was in his tight drip. After the brawl was over, Thrud still tries to talk to her father, but Thor doesn't listen and just gulps the last of his drink and collapses on the ground, drunk to the max, too weak to stand on his own. He has to be helped outside and is yelled at by his own daughter, demanding that he get up and go on the mission with Atreus. Throughout the mission, Thor is angry and frustrated, talking to Atreus in a tired tone, yet still helps him in finding the last piece of the mask. After the mask is fully restored, Odin appears and congratulates Atreus only, not giving Thor the time, to which the latter actually says, "You're welcome," because he wished to be somewhat credited. Sif and the Valkyries Hrist and Mist arrive and she demands that Atreus be arrested because they found proof that he took part in Heimdall's death, though Odin commands that he be left alone. The two argue, with Sur including that Atreus had made her husband depressed, and Odin reveals to his wife that he was drinking on his own, which he didn't approve of. Alone for a moment, Sif reminds Thor of the good times they had with Magni and Modi in the past, wondering if Thrud would be the next one to die. Worried for his daughter's safety, Thor is completely done with Atreus being in Asgard and points Mjolnir at him, blaming him for everything, almost strikes him down, even with Odin demanding him to stop. Luckily it doesn't happen as Atreus escapes in the nick of time. Much later, Thor is seen battling the world serpent Jormungandr during Ragnarok. Mimir hoping in the distance that the giant serpent can be the distraction they need. Hours later, Freyr, who tried with the two combatants, claims to Kratos and Atreus that Thor and Jormungandr didn't want to listen and kept fighting. Thor immediately wins the fight against the world serpent by striking him in the head, splintering Yggdrasil and sending his enemy back in time, and goes to fight Kratos, demanding him to stay away from Thrud, who tries to call him off. Tackling Kratos, Thor screams that he's done with him and Atreus, confirming that he's allowed to kill him this time. Battle-hardened, Kratos gains the upper hand and impales Thor's hand to the ground. After he was told that his daughter became a friend to Atreus, his hand is set free, but Thor still wants to continue fighting because they can't fight who they are, destroyers. Eventually, the god of thunder finally listens when Kratos insists that they must change themselves for the future of their children, and through the Spartans' words, Thor stands up to Odin, no longer loyal to his father. Unfortunately, this only sealed Thor's fate, and was immediately killed by an enraged Odin. In his dying moments, Thor looks at a horrified Thrud one last time and holds out his hand, calling to her before fading away. Appearance. Thor's full appearance is not fully shown in God of War, though he is seen possessing blue eyes, red hair, and a thick beard which seems to be braided, as mentioned in the Lost Pages of Norse Myth, Episode 4. He is exceptionally tall and muscular, roughly equal to Kratos in terms of body stature and height. He wears a black hooded cloak fastened together with a yellow leather cord and armor, the latter of which consists of a decoratively embossed dark-colored chest guard and matching vambraces worn over a long-sleeved shirt. He seems to have a cold-blooded and serious expression very similar to Kratos himself in the past. According to Mimir, Thor also has several pieces of the stone giant Hrungnir embedded in his skull. It is shown in God of War, Ragnarök that Thor's appearance is similar to what was shown in the ending of God of War, but that he is burly and thick-waisted, with a large, rather obese but still muscular and heavily built figure, perhaps accurately depicting his description by Mimir as a fat dauber. Thor is also shown to tower over Kratos in height. He is unarmored across his bare chest and has a large belly but wears plated pauldrons and bracers on his arms and sports leather armor around his waist to protect his upper legs and hips. He also sports tattoos similar to, though not as extensive as, those of his brother, Baldur. Similar to Kratos, Thor bears a scar over his right eye. Although unconfirmed, this scar could be the result of Hrungnir's corpse falling on him immediately after his murder at the hands of the god of thunder. After his first fight with Kratos, Thor has a scar on his stomach from Kratos' axe. Personality. Thor is widely feared throughout the 9 realms for his cruelty, violent temper, brutality, and sadism. He is utterly ruthless, showing no mercy to his enemies, and his bloodlust was noted by Mimir to be the only thing greater than Odin's paranoia, and many consider him the worst of the Aesir gods. Despite being half-giant himself, Thor took sadistic pleasure in torturing and killing any giant he could find. His reputation was somewhat similar to Ares, who was considered the worst among the Olympian gods, and Kratos, who was feared throughout Greece era for his genocidal act against the gods. However, in truth, Thor is a tragic individual, as he was raised by Odin to be his greatest combat asset and emotionally abused and warped into becoming unquestionably loyal, knowing fully well what he has done is far from being right and suffering guilt for what he has done, yet seeing no chance to change his ways and be better. What makes him different from Ares, however, is that he seems to possess a sense of honor, as he dislikes cowardice. When Modi fled after Magni, his favorite son, died, Thor was enraged, and subsequently beat his surviving son for fleeing from Kratos and deemed Modi a coward. He also somewhat cares for his worshippers, as when one of his faithful followers died he made time to visit the family, although even then he still could be enraged easily, especially while drunk, and ended up taking advantage of his higher status. Thor's overall intelligence could be called into question, as many a time has Thor been made a fool of himself or made stupid, reckless mistakes, quite comparable to his sons, in fact. Kratos called Thor as a fool when hearing not even Mjolnir in hand will break the ice to reach Thamir's magical chisel. Mimir called Thor for the destruction upon the Jotnar as sweaty bawbag, fat dauber, thunder lummox, and the biggest butching bastard in the 9 realms. Brock considered him the big idiot, and Atreus also called him an idiot when hearing about how he got crushed by Hrungnir's body. Most of all, Thor had his legendary hammer stolen by the giant Thrym, when he was carelessly sleeping. However, Thor is clever enough to know his limit and not try to challenge Starker alone, knowing very well that he might die if do so. It seems this is due to Odin instilling inside Thor the idea that he was born and lived to fight, not to think. In addition, Thor is extremely arrogant, typical for an Aesir, as he would go to great lengths to cement his reputation amongst the 9 realms and be respected, as well as feared. An example being the destruction of the village when Thor battled Thamir. Thor claimed credit for the giant's death and the village's destruction, despite the fact that Thor was merely lucky in both actions. To aid his reputation as one of the most hated and feared gods of the 9 realms, Thor's overall demeanor seems to revolve around him being cruel and sadistic simply for the sake of it. An example of this could be seen when Thor needlessly murdered Hrungnir even though the stone giant was merely amusing the Aesir and was a threat to no one. Thor's only outward expressions seem to be of rage and smug arrogance due to his abilities. An example of this is seen when Thor was the only god not amused by Hrungnir's foolish performance in Asgard, preferring to outright murder the Jotun seeing as how the simpleton had nothing to offer him other than his death. Thor's cruel nature can come out even when he is trying to be friendly towards others. After a wayward spirit's father had passed away, his mother built a statue of Thor to watch over his grave. Appearing to the family, Thor offered his condolences for their loss. Although they were overjoyed at first with the god's presence, Thor took advantage of their hospitality and quickly became drunk. Distraught, the mother asked him to leave, to which Thor responded by brutally murdering her in a drunken rage before leaving the son behind, who cursed the god of thunder. Despite his dark side, Thor has proven to deeply care and trust his family. Despite all that Odin put him through, Thor was blindly loyal to Odin for most of his life and desperately sought to earn Odin's approval. He was close with Baldur, comforting him in his depression over being unable to feel and trusting him with his life, despite the latter's insanity and disgust towards the former's bloodlust. Magni points out that he and Modi have to trust Baldur because their father believes in him, despite Modi proclaiming that their uncle had not been sane for a while. Thor was also known for being furious at Magni's death, tragically lashing out and beating Modi almost to death. Powers and abilities. Powers. Being both half-giant and Odin's firstborn son, Thor is the second most powerful of the Aesir, and the physically strongest Aesir, surpassed only by his father. His power is great enough for having slaughtered almost all the giants living outside of Jotunheim, whilst being recognized and feared by most alongside his brutality. Mimir himself stated that he does not know whether Kratos can kill Thor, with the god of thunder later proving to be a close match for the ghost of Sparta in their fights. Immeasurable strength. As the god of strength and half-giant, Thor is the strongest of the Aesir gods, surpassing that of Tyr, Heimdall, Baldur, Magni, Modi, and even Odin himself in terms of brute force and physical strength. His strength is so great that he was able to single-handedly slaughter the Jotnar to near extinction, even shattering the head of the immensely durable Hrungnir the Brawler with a single blow. Jormungandr is one of the few Jotnar strong enough to contend with Thor's strength. His first battle against the World Serpent was felt across all the 9 realms, and Thor later battled Jormungandr at Ragnarok, with his final strike on the World Serpent violently shaking and splintering Yggdrasil, sending it backward through time before his own birth, a feat which even Kratos deemed as madness. Only Starker, the strongest of the giants, proved to be too much for Thor to defeat or even fight alone, requiring the aid from the combined armies of Asgard, Vanaheim and Midgard to subdue him, although Thor was still strong enough to rip his arms off after Starkauer had sustained severe injuries. Thor's immense strength proved comparable even to that of Kratos. At no point in their first fight was Kratos able to overpower Thor despite him holding back at that time, with Thor evenly holding back Kratos' shield from striking him when they were both using 2 hands at once before quickly pushing him back when he tried to summon his axe and evenly locking Mjolnir with the Leviathan axe as they fought over the air. He could casually lift and throw Kratos over his head with a single hand, even choke and lift him off his feet with a single hand, with Kratos showing visible struggle in breaking free from his grip. Thor's strength allows him to create shockwaves simply by clapping his hands or punching the ground, and he could easily send enemies, even Kratos himself, flying several feet away with simple punches and kicks. He is also able to easily jump high into the air while simultaneously carrying Atreus. With Mjolnir, Thor was able to hit Kratos with sufficient force to send him flying high into the air and great distance away, even shattering the Guardian shield with only a few blows. Kratos noted in the Codex that the full force of Thor's attack is as heavy as any he had felt. Superhuman speed and reflexes. Despite his massive size and overweight body, Thor has proven to be able to move at extremely fast speeds, with stupendous reflexes, being able to evenly match Kratos in direct combat and repeatedly catch Kratos off guard to physically manhandle him as well as easily react to Kratos' attacks. Superhuman agility. Thor has extraordinary agility, capable of easily jumping great heights and distance and landing without any problems. Despite his massive figure, Thor's can appear and disappear so unreasonably fast he even startled Odin when he come to his father's call. Superhuman stamina. As the physically strongest of the Aesir, Thor possesses a tremendous amount of superhuman stamina. He fought continuously throughout Ragnarok, fend off large numbers of 9 realms reinforcements, battling both young Jormungandr and Ragnarok at the same time, then went on to fight Kratos immediately after sending Jormungandr back to the past. Superhuman durability/9 vulnerability. As the physically strongest of the Aesir gods, Thor possesses tremendous superhuman durability, which must have helped him in his massacre of the Jotnar, as he would have to be able to easily withstand their attacks with little to no damage. During his fights with Kratos, Thor was able to easily shrug off powerful blows from the Ghost of Sparta with only little blood and no significant injuries, showing incredible resistance to blunt trauma. After being slashed by the Leviathan axe on the abdomen, Thor got stabbed to the same spot by both the blades of Chaos and Draupnir spear later, but he showed to be more angered rather than harmed. However, he still can be incapacitated, such as when the colossal body of Hrungnir fell on him, he was unable to remove the corpse himself until his sons removed it for him. After his final fight with Kratos, Odin was also able to impale and kill him, albeit Thor was exhausted and wounded. Tempestokinesis. As the god of storms, Thor has the ability to summon harsh lightning storms at whim. He displayed this power when he caused a giant storm to occur to wake Kratos and Atreus up. Electrokinesis. As the god of thunder, Thor has absolute control over electricity and lightning, with it being an innate power inherited by his sons, although Thor's electrokinetic powers has shown to far surpass theirs. During his attack on Kratos and Atreus, Thor was capable of causing bolts of lightning to constantly rain down on their house by simply willing it. He was able to imbue Mjolnir with lightning to throw it and cast waves of electricity. He could rain down bolts of lightning that left behind fields of lightning for some time just by striking the ground with his hammer. While fighting the world serpent and Surge, Thor manipulated powerful lightning strikes and disorient Jormungandr before delivering the blow that sent him through time. Electric armor. Thor can infuse electricity into his own body. When he uses this form, his body appears to be cloaked by lightning and eyes glows blue, with his strength, durability, and speed increasing, make it almost look like he can teleport. Immortality. As with all gods, Thor is immortal and cannot be killed by anything not powerful enough. Flight. Thor could levitate and fly through the air at extreme speeds using his lightning powers. Abilities. Master Combatant. Thor is the mightiest warrior in Asgard. As such, he is an extremely skilled fighter with hundreds of years' worth of training and experience. He single-handedly killed countless giants on Midgard and many other powerful beings. Thor's martial prowess is so great, that Mimir is uncertain that Kratos can even defeat him in battle. His fighting style skillfully combines hand-to-hand combat with his usage of Mjolnir. Thor's fighting prowess proved to be a near-indomitable opponent for Kratos, being the only person that was able to fight Kratos to a stalemate in their first fight and only narrowly losing to him in their second fight. Master hand-to-hand combatant. Despite having one of the most powerful weapons in the Nine Realms, Thor is also an exceptionally proficient martial artist, masterfully mixing his unarmed combat with his skill in using Mjolnir, performing powerful, swift and precise punches and kicks as well as being proficient in wrestling and grappling, capable of even suplexing and throwing Kratos around. In the first round of their fight, Thor's unarmed fighting skills alone proved enough to put Kratos with his shield on the ropes and even fought him using his axe for some time before eventually having to use his hammer. Hammer Mastery. Thor is incredibly skilled in using his hammer Mjolnir, having used the weapon in battle for centuries and caused mass genocides on the giants with devastating ease. During his fights with Kratos, Thor was able to evenly match his usage of the Leviathan axe with his hammer and deliver repeated blows on him, even managing to destroy the Guardian shield. Furthermore, Thor can pull himself toward Mjolnir with lightning speed. He often uses it to pass through terrain or quickly close the gap between him and his opponent. Weapons. Mjolnir, forged by Brock and Sindri, this special one-handed hammer is Thor's weapon of choice when killing giants and other foes. When thrown, Mjolnir always hits its target and returns to Thor's hand. It is also described as a super weapon by Mimir and as such is one of the most powerful weapons in all of the Nine Realms. The only weapons capable of opposing its immense power are the Leviathan axe, Surtur's sword, and possibly the Blades of Chaos.
If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.